Well, we want to begin this morning with Pope Francis. At a news conference that wrapped up a short while ago, the new Pope outlined his vision for the Catholic Church. Keir Simmons attended the news conference and is at the Vatican for us. Keir, good morning.
Hey, Lester, good morning. It was pretty extraordinary to be in the same room with him and to witness the informal style that we have seen him use over the last few days, almost chatting with the journalist. He told one story about how he decided to choose his new name. He said as he was elected, he was given a hug by his friend, the Brazilian Cardinal Gomes, and that the Cardinal whispered in his ear, "Remember the poor." And he says at that moment in his heart, he thought of St. Francis d'Assisi and decided to choose that name. As I say, the same informal style, at moments stepping away from his throne to talk to people one-to-one. But remember, the people in the audience, journalists, are people who have been asking questions over the last few days about his age. He's 76, and the Vatican having to push back against those suggestions that he didn't do enough to help two Argentinian priests during the Argentinian junta in 1976. Those two priests were tortured. The Vatican saying that is not a true story. Despite the fact that this was a group full of journalists, the Pope managed to make them laugh. It's pretty difficult to make a group of journalists laugh, saying to them, "You've all worked very hard." One other thing we should note, by the way, Lester, we're hearing today that he will go and visit the Pope Emeritus next Saturday at Castel Gandolfo, the Pope's summer residence. That will be an historic meeting, Lester.
Keir Simmons at the Vatican for us this morning. Thanks. And as Keir mentioned, it has been a whirlwind week for Pope Francis. Tomorrow, public prayer in St. Peter's Square. And in just 3 days, he will be officially installed as leader of the Catholic Church. Father Robert Barron is an NBC News analyst. Father Barron, good morning. It's good to see you.
Good morning, Lester. The weather's improved since last I was here with you.
Oh, yeah. It was a little bit rainy when we were there. But let me ask you about the style we've seen so far from Pope Francis. He certainly demonstrated his humility, his sense of humor, his very casual touch. But those are stylistic things. How will that translate into how he will actually lead the Roman Catholic Church?
I think we're seeing in that style what the Church calls the preferential option for the poor. The Latin American bishops in 1968 gathered in Medellin, and they put that forward as the defining element of the Church. It was picked up by John Paul II. And I think what we heard in that wonderful story about Cardinal Gomes is just that the Church exists preferentially for the poor. I think he's putting a face on that idea, and that's a very powerful dynamic.
It also shows a managerial style to the extent that he told folks in his home country of Argentina, don't buy a ticket, don't come to the installation. Instead, use that money, donate it to the poor. What does that signal to those who work at the Vatican about the kind of boss he is going to be?
Well, it signals quite a bit. You know, Pope Benedict said the Church does 3 basic things. It evangelizes, it worships God, and it takes care of the poor. And so if that's one of the top priorities of the Church's life, then in everything we do, there has to be that preferential option. I think some of this Baroque splendor, how beautiful it is, but also it can sometimes stand between the Church and the people it wants to serve.
You know, we keep hearing the word reform, and clearly there have been problems in the Catholic Church, the abuse scandal, top among them. But some people think about reform as maybe changing the Church in a doctrinal way. Is that going to happen under this Pope?
No. The Pope, preserves the doctrine of the Church. This Pope will teach the same doctrine that John the 23rd taught, that Paul VI taught, that John Paul II taught. So it's not a question of changing doctrine. Just as our president, swears to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution, something similar here, even at a higher level. The Pope preserves the great Constitution of the Church. But he can change the focus, the emphasis, the style, certainly. And that Pope is certainly doing that.
All right, Father Robert Barron, again, good to see you, and it does look like a gorgeous day there in Rome. What happened when I was there? All right, thanks very much.
Not too good.